34 events like this going on across the world. I'm sorry. So I think it's 15 different countries at last count, 4 continents. So early this morning, I believe people started their hackathon in Beijing, and there's events all over. There's 2 in Asia, Japan and China, and then there's several in Europe. And then I guess the final events will start later today out in California. So we've kind of expanded all the way around the world. So as a part of that, some of the videos will be broadcast to other sites, and that's one of the goals with a simultaneous event is that we can share content from one site to another to help build up each one of those. So most of the schedule that we'll have today is going to be very flexible, except that since we're trying to have a point of synchronization with other sites, the broadcasts are going to have to be fairly on time and consistent. And so there's 2 today from here, which means that we have a lot of flexibility. So one is a brief welcome that I was going to do now, and the other is going to be later when we're going to hear from Monica Rosenberg and Emily Finn about a lot of their fantastic research using connectomes to identify individual variation and things. But I kind of wanted to welcome everybody to the Brainhack. I'm Cameron Craddock. So me, Daniel Margulies, and Pierre Belec started the Brainhack back in 2012. Since then, we've had 12 events. The majority of those have been international events, and now this is our 3rd simultaneous event. It's something that's kind of building up as we go. First, I'd like to acknowledge Child Mind Institute. So not only has Child Mind Institute been very nice in terms of providing a spread and a space for us to work over the next 3 days, but also all of the infrastructure that has been used for the Brainhack, or the majority of the centralized infrastructure that has been used for Brainhack Global has been supported by Child Mind Institute. So people that design the web pages, that deal with communications and organize everything. So it's very nice of them to give us that, and we'll hear more from Harold later. We'll tell you all who don't know about Child Mind Institute, what it is and what we do here. So many people wonder the question, oh, and also, by the way, Franz Liam posted his slides. I acknowledged him on the first thing, and I adapted some of those he offered, and I accepted. So many people kind of wonder what is Brainhack, and y'all all learn what Brainhack is. One of the things that I always recommend people to do is to kind of try it and learn. Brainhack is about a lot of intangible things, and so it's very hard to describe those to people and have them get kind of a full sense of what it is. But in general, it's about collaborative, working together to build relationships with other people in the community, learn new skills, and to be able to diversify your ability to study brains. And my personal belief, and the beliefs of other people that are part of the Brainhack organization, is that doing this, not only will we build a better community in terms of people, a community that we like better, but also we will advance and accelerate the understanding of the brain and advance brain science. And that's kind of why we do it. So the basic tenets that a lot of the Brainhack ethos is based on is the open science ethos. And we call it the open neuroscience ethos. But basically, we believe that ideas, data, and tools should be openly shared. That rather than, many of us were sort of raised and trained in environments that were very siloed, where you didn't share in order to maintain a competitive advantage over competing labs, right? And that competitive model has helped people build very empires, right? And so if you look around neuroimaging, there's maybe, yes? Oh, we figured it out. Thank you.
It's all good?
Yes, thank you. But they built, and if you look around neuroimaging, there are these very large empires where they bring in several millions of dollars a year and all of those things. But fundamentally, those empires have maybe accomplished a lot of things, but I don't believe that they could accomplish everything that they could have possibly accomplished in that infrastructure. I think that if they had been much more open about sharing their tools and their ideas, that those things would proliferate. A very good model of that we have in the world is the personal computer. And if IBM and many of the other people who originally started computing hadn't taken the decision to create an open specification and an open infrastructure that anybody can participate in, computers would not have proliferated to the extent they have today. On the opposite side of that, you had Apple's model, which created a lot of money, right? But even Apple has adopted all of those open architectures that were shared by IBM and created out of there. So if Apple had won the upper hand in the beginning, we wouldn't have computers to the extent we have today. And I believe similarly, we're going through sort of a similar revolution in science where people are beginning to be much more open about it. And we're allowing much more, by giving access to more people, then we're entreating and encouraging more people to come to the fold. And one of the parts about Brainhack that's very important to me is the idea that we can bring people in who are not typical neuroscience researchers or don't consider themselves typical neuroscience researchers into studying problems that we're interested in because it'll help us. And that is very broad. So many people talk about that exclusively kind of in the context of computational people, data science. But also it's very interesting to think about the ways in which artists, anthropologists, people, humanities, a lot of variety, historians can actually contribute quite a lot to helping us understand the phenomena of neuroscience and help us grow both in terms of understanding the brain, but also in terms of making a better kind of scientific culture. So many hackathons that are out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about why Brainhack really isn't a hackathon, even though it is a hackathon, right? But many of the hackathons that are out there, they have competitions. And with the Brainhack model, specifically with the HBM hackathons that we have, there's been a lot of pressure on us to create competitions in order to drive interest, right? And many of the people that come to the events, or many of the people that are dissuaded from coming to the events, are worried about having, what will they work on when they get here? And these are maybe some anxieties that people in the room have. And the idea of, well, if you have a competition, then you've created a unifying thing where everybody knows what it is to come to, right? But in my opinion, that, competitions, they create the exact opposite of what we want in this community, where people, would come in, they would work in factions, not talk to the other groups or their neighboring groups, and, try to whatever, win the prize or the honor that they get from having the best example of things. And many of the competitions that have been had at the OHBM Hackathon were won by people that weren't even at the event, right? So they don't even induce people or entice people to come to the actual event. And not only that, if you'll read, so there were some very interesting competitions that they used to have in neuroimaging, maybe we'll still have, around brain state prediction. And so a very good friend of mine, Carlton Chu, won of those one year, and he did some very brilliant work in it. But if you read his paper, it really seems like what he did wasn't necessarily as much as develop a really cool algorithm to work. I mean, he did do that, but also he kind of hacked the system, right? And maybe Arno knows a little bit about this from creating it. But when you have a competition, it's not about creating generalizable knowledge. It's about winning the competition. So a lot of times you end up with a solution that's overfit, or where people use the feedback, use what they know about the grading system or otherwise in order to be able to manipulate the system in order to be able to win, right? And I'm not saying that's bad behavior. That's what a competition breeds. And that does not translate into science, right? And so that's another reason why we believe more in the collaborative model than the competitive model. So here we encourage collaboration and not competition. And it's a lot of, as I've mentioned, meeting new people, getting in touch with new ideas, learning new skills. And an important aspect of it is that the content is generated by you. Right? So I'm not going to, if you look at the schedule, there's a lot of open times. There's things like the unconference talks. All of that are opportunities for you to generate content for what goes on here. So the projects are things that you want to work on, and the talks that occur are the ones that you want to hear. And the goal is to sort of maximize what you get out of it, your personal development. And again, that's kind of an intangible that's sometimes hard to explain to people. So what will happen over the next few days? So this is from a publication that we wrote last year that kind of explains overall Brainhack. But to give you a sense, so we'll begin this morning. So this is part of it, the introduction. But also we'll have a meet and greet where you'll introduce yourself to other people. Typically we do something where maybe you'll stand up and say 3 words about yourself or whatever. But this is an opportunity for you to kind of initially introduce yourself to other people and to start making inroads that'll lead to collaborations. We will have some prearranged talks. So every day we have a keynote here. Mike's going to give a keynote tomorrow talking about some of the open science initiatives we've been working at it. And that's really the only program thing that there is. And a lot of that is just to kind of drive some excitement with the group, to have somebody come in and talk about some innovative new things. But also it's to kind of precede the schedule a little bit so that people have at least something that they know is going to happen to help kind of calm down their concerns over wasting their time. We're going to have unconference sessions. So today and tomorrow from 4:30 to 5:30, we have unconference sessions. And these are opportunities for whomever that would like to talk and give a brief talk or demo or whatever has that opportunity. So you sign up, say what you like or propose what you'd like to talk about, and then you'll have an opportunity to talk. In the rare event that we end up with more people that would like to talk than we have time, then we'll use some sort of democratic process to figure out who speaks. We generally don't run into that problem. Usually what we'll end up doing is just dividing the hour amongst the number of people that have signed up, and that'll give everybody maybe 6 to 7 minutes. And according to the TED people, 7 minutes would be optimal anyway, right? So we should be good. And also there's going to be project work, right? And so the goal is for you to be able to work together. And I encourage people to kind of step out a little bit from what they would normally do. So if you look around the room, the majority of the people that are here currently, hopefully it'll change, are from one of three sort of factions. And the New York neuroimaging. We've got NYU, we've got Child Mind, and currently we have CCNY. And hopefully, we have people that have signed up from 15 different institutions, and hopefully we'll see those. So the goal is not to have you necessarily work with the people that you came with, and it's not to work on the things that you would have worked on otherwise. I mean, I definitely want you to do something that you feel is fulfilling and contributes to overall what your agenda and life or research is. But at the same time, I want you to work outside of your own box a little bit. And so you can think about maybe you have a skill that you can contribute to somebody else's project that you otherwise wouldn't work on. Or maybe you can take this as an opportunity to learn to work with a type of data that that you haven't had experience with, but you'd like to learn more about, right? So in general, we have projects that range the complete gamut. We have projects that are, people developing software code for a very specific thing that they're interested in. We have people that are doing data analysis for neuroimaging or otherwise an experiment that they've run. And we have people that are just they're just trying to learn something new, and they go through kind of a demo of what they want. And the good thing about being in this room when you go through that is that there's people with expertise that are quite varied. And so if you have questions, you can get a lot of different opinions on how to solve that or address that, which I find to be a pretty good way to go. At the end, we'll have a wrap-up session, which is similar to the unconference session, but it'll be an opportunity for you to talk about the project that you worked on and what you accomplished on that. So the word hackathon scares people, right? And so we've constantly had to deal with concerns over, well, I'm not a computer programmer, I don't think I can have anything that should be. And the reason why I think that many people have those concerns is the definition of a hackathon that you get online is a brief event, 1 to a couple of days, where computer programmers and others involved in software development meet and collaborate intensely on software projects, right? So replace everything that deals with computer programmers, software development, and software with brain science and brain scientists. And that's what the brain hack is, right? So it's brain scientists in general. I usually tell people that it's very likely that if you come to a brain hack, that the project that you'll work on will involve a computer, right? But it won't necessarily involve writing a program, developing software, or even coding, right? Projects in the past have been people working together to think through how to best, build a specification. And so they're using a computer, but they're using Word, or otherwise. So please don't be overly anxious about the hackathon terminology in terms of, programming and otherwise. A bit about the Brainhack projects. One thing that I failed to mention is that a little bit later today, maybe in 30 minutes or an hour, we'll have project pitches. So that's an opportunity for people who already have ideas of what they want to work on to come up to the front, tell the rest of the group what they're working on, and then that allows them to identify people in the group that may be willing to help them, and also helps them find people that they're interested in working with. So I think that in the local side we'll probably start that at 11, and that'll give y'all a little bit of time to prepare, so maybe in 45 minutes, and think about the projects if you haven't thought about them already. So here's pictures from previous hackathons. So this is Daniel and Pierre. So the other founders really getting into a full-blown hacking session. So this is actually a precursor to extreme programming. I don't know if y'all have seen kind of the buddy programming or paired programming where you work with one another. So at some point, peers actually going to flip over, and they're going to start spooning, and that's when the paired programming really kind of gets but it's interesting too. I like this picture on the left because there's a lot of people in this room that you can recognize as now being people that are very, heavily involved in the Brainhack organization, and many of them now are hosting Brainhack events over the course of this weekend. And there's a lot of people that are hosting these new events too. So the unconference session, again, I explained it a little bit, but that's kind of more of the sort of standard academic thing where we listen to other people talk. But rather than being like an unconference where you go through the pre-assignment, the abstract, and all of that beforehand, instead we decided as we go. And there's educational aspects of it too. So in the past, we've done a lot of tutorials and demos. And so, if people, for example, in the room feel like they particularly want to learn one thing or a certain thing, and they identify somebody in the room, then we can definitely have demos or any of those things, tutorials on learning those things. And we can talk about those as we come up. In the past, we've had a dedicated educational track. It's called Brainhack 101, where we've specifically taught people skills like how to use GitHub, how to use Python, and things of that nature. Those are online in videos, and I can show you how to get those. So if y'all want to go through that aspect, you can. But we're not going to be hosting any of those, or we're not planning now to be doing any of those from here. We can talk more of that. But most of it is going to be peer education, right? So one-on-one counseling, talking to people, finding out what they know, and learning how to incorporate that into what you want to be able to do. Some of the single pass site events, and you'll notice some things that show up quite a bit are Paris, France, and this is due to Roberto Toro, who is heavily interested in brain hacks and has one at the drop of a hat. Has one of the most exquisitely gorgeous brain hack web pages out there as well. But we've had them throughout the world, and so there's so after a while, having these centralized brain hacks from the beginning, one of the concepts that me and the other founders had was, well, the brain hack is a beautiful thing, and having these international hackathons where everybody goes to Berlin and hangs out for 3 days is a lot of fun. But there's a little bit of a hypocrisy in the idea that you got to go internationally in order to collaborate with people when you may not collaborate or work very closely with people that are in your own institution or in your own city. So we try to encourage people to have these regional brain hack events, and most of the people push back and are like, well, I'm a very small site. I can't bring in a well-known teacher, well-known researcher to come and give a lecture that will draw people. And so there was a lot of concern with that. So out of that ideology came the simultaneous brain hack. And the first one we had was called Brainhack Eastern Daylight Time. And this was kind of a conservative beginning, right? So the idea is, well, if you're going to have a simultaneous hackathon, then you have to be able to have the events simultaneously, right? And so the easiest way to do that is to have everybody in the same or in close enough time zones. So the first brain hack was Brainhack Eastern Daylight Time. That was 2014. And there are 8 sites in the US, mostly on the East Coast, and Brazil joined as well. And that was a very good event. And that kind of kicked everything off. And then the next year, we got a lot of interest, with the Brainhack EDT. I had people emailing from Europe and emailing from California, like, well, why can't we be involved? You kind of stuck up Eastern Daylight Time people. And so we extended it to the Americas, which made it more broad. Internationally, we brought in Mexico and Brazil, and then kind of, y'all know about the history in terms of creating Brainhack Global. And y'all may have seen the map to kind of get an idea of all the different sites that have been signed up. So during the event, if you want to communicate, either to express your interest or ask a question or whatever, express your intense joy of being here, we have the Brainhack Slack team. Has everybody signed up to Slack? You have? You have not? Or you have? Everybody has? Does anybody need help signing up to Slack? All right. So there's Slack channels, and Slack's just a way to communicate. It's you're very familiar with it. It's kind of a message board interface. But it allows you to put more media things up there. Chris Gorgolewski will probably put up a daily cat picture. But it's a good way to communicate between the sites. So there's the overall Brainhack Global 2017 channel. And then there's also a channel that's specific to each location. So there's a channel that's BHP 17 minus NYC that is for here. So if you do tune in to other videos, so as I mentioned before, other sites will be broadcasting. I'll show you how to, so the videos, here's a link to the videos, but I can show you a better way of getting it than just from this link here. But other sites have listed content that'll be there. So there's things like imaging genetics, there's comparative neuroanatomy talks, there's just a wide range of different things that are out there that may be of interest to you. If you are interested in tuning into those, maybe if there's enough interest, we could actually show them on the big board, or maybe you can just watch them on your computer. But if you ask questions or want to ask questions during that or about that, then you would go to the Brainhack site, the channel for the Brainhack site that's hosting the talk. Also, if you're Twittering, then we have a hashtag PHG17. There's already been a lot of Twitter about this. So now I kind of want to talk a little bit about the outcomes. This is one thing that we generally don't talk about towards the end, but I'd like for people to start thinking about this now. So in 2015, another major concern that we've had with the Brainhack is the being able to, because it's mostly about intangibles, is actually creating something tangible that you can show to your, your boss, your professor, whomever, and say, this is what I accomplished at Brainhack. And in order to do that, we created a Brainhack Proceedings. And so because there's so many events throughout a year, we include all of the events that happen during a calendar year in the Brainhack Proceeding for that year. So if you want to look, so the very first one we did was with GigaScience, and that's published. It actually published in November of 2016. It took a while to get it out. And there's, I believe, 23 or 24 project reports from the event. And each one of these project reports are 1,000 words, and they pretty much just describe what you accomplished here. And we could talk a little bit about that, but some people get a little bit anxious about, well, I don't think I did enough to put it in the report. It's not about that. It's about describing what you did, cataloging that, and being able to let other people know about it. Because a lot of things that happen here are of interest to other people. So it is a very valuable kind of thing to do. In 2016, we started going with Rio, and a nice thing about Rio compared to the previous proceedings is that Rio allows us to publish each report as each report is available. And previously, it was a kind of a more, combine everything together at once and publish it at one time. So even if somebody had submitted and completed their paper, December of 2015, it didn't end up getting published until November 16. But that will no longer be the case with the new way of doing it. And so for the 2016 Brainhack Proceedings, it's still open and accepting publications. The deadline will be at the end of March. So the reports are published after a technical review. So an editor looks at it and just makes sure that the grammar's fine, the spelling's okay, but the overall format is consistent with what we expect, and just general kind of things of that nature. And then after all of the paper, after everything is published, then we're going to go back and do a post-publication. So the members of the Brainhack community are going to go to these and post comments on them in the open, and then the authors of them have the option to revise it if they wish. But it's kind of a forward-thinking way in which to get, kind of allow the community in order to be able to evaluate these things. So the 2017 Brainhack Proceedings is something that's still a bit raw, right? So Rio was very happy to publish our things for 2016. We haven't negotiated anything with them in 2017. And frankly, we haven't negotiated anything with anybody in 2017, which creates a bit of a problem because, the things that y'all work on at this event, it would probably be nice if y'all could start submitting something at the end of the event or a week later, just so that you can do it while it's fresh, or you can do it maybe while you still have some time to do it. And so what we've come up with is a way that we can have kind of a pre-publication of these things and the pre-technical review and the beginnings of the review process before we necessarily negotiate a deal with the publisher to actually put them out. And so I've discussed with at least Daniel and some others, and we've come up with an idea which we think may work in the beginning, and it'd be very nice to hear people's input on this. But what we would like for people to do is submit their preprint, so to create their report, create a preprint of it, and submit it to bioRxiv. And at bioRxiv, they have specific channels, and we'll create a channel for the Brainhack 2017. And so you would submit it and say, okay, it should go in the Brainhack 2017 channel. Before it can actually go in the channel, it has to be approved by one of the editors. And the editors will go through a technical review with you of the paper. So any sort of grammatical errors, typos, things of that nature, we'll try to identify. After it's published on bioRxiv, Then it gets pulled into the academic karma system. Has anybody, first off, do y'all know what bioarchive is? Everybody? Anybody not know what bioarchive is? Okay, you don't know what bioarchive is. We'll tell you. It's a preprint server. So the idea is that you retain the copyright for most of your papers, right? But they end up going behind a paywall. Well, what a copyright actually is for papers, so even if you don't own it, is it doesn't have much to do with the content in terms of the words there, but it has to do with the layout, right? So the font, the combination of fonts that go into it, the header, the colors that are used, yada, yada, right? So that's what you copyright, but you don't actually copyright content, right? So you own the content. So you can publish the content as something that looks totally different than what the publisher created wherever you like. And so they have preprint servers out there where you can do that. Is this all right? I'm not leaving this straight. But so, and then the idea with the preprints is that people can see your work much more quickly when it comes out, and they can evaluate it, right? And get a sense of it. So now, so this has long been the way that the world works in physics, mathematics. They submit their papers to the preprint, and then people start learning about it and evaluating it. It may not actually get published in a journal for a year later or more, but people already know about it by the time it comes out by the journal, and it's really had its impact on the front. And so bioarchive, and importantly, is it's not paywall, so everybody can access it, right? And also importantly, it's not necessarily subjected to anonymous peer review, which can be good or bad depending on your opinions on it. So that's what bioarchive is. It's a preprint server. Archive, ARXIV, is more kind of geared towards physics and science, physics kind of engineering, mathematics, science. And then bioarchive, BIORXIV, is for biology related. And so they have been hosting a lot of the neurology and neuroscience publications. So there's another site that's called Academic Karma. Has anybody heard of that? Or has anybody not heard of that? You have not heard of it. More people haven't heard of that. So Academic Karma is kind of an overlay that pulls in pre-publication papers from bioarchive, archive, and others of their ilk, and it allows you to review them, right? So it's an open either pre or post-publication review interface. So you can go there and you can post your review and your comments on what you thought about the paper. And it's open, so whomever wrote the review has to, well, I believe they have to use their name, but they do use their name. And so it's a very open review process. So it's a really kind of cool idea, and they have a couple of different modes in order to try to encourage people to review it. But the idea here is that we'll put the papers on bioarchive, and then we'll go through our standard review process through the Academic Karma. And then after we've done that, then it's published, right? And so you can cite about it, tell your friends about it, show it to your bosses, whomever. And then over time, as we sort of build up the 2017 proceedings, then maybe we'll make an arrangement with GigaScience or another publisher in order to have something published. If we decide we need it, maybe at the end of the day we decide we don't. So I want to talk about that. Another thing is, and maybe this is more relevant to people that are out in video land, we've been kind of overhauling our brainhack.org webpage. So if any of y'all have gone to brainhack.org, probably you know that it is kind of a slow dog. And so we've been trying to fix that. So instead of using the site that was previously hosting it, we've decided to make it all a GitHub page, which means that it's not as, we can't use as many sort of niceties as we could use before. So we can't use dynamic content in terms of like PHP, CGI type things. So it's very difficult with the forms on GitHub, but we can do JavaScript. So we can still replicate a lot of the things. So I just want people to know that we are working on the webpage and trying to make it look nice. I think it kind of looks nice as it is. And this is sort of a central hub, central repository for information about the Brainhack, and you can refer to it. So that's events.brainhack.org. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is that we recently added a code of conduct for the Brainhack. And so the number one reason that we've done this is because the Brainhack, we've always tried to encourage as much diversity as we can across everything, right? Diverse as we possibly can be. So you pick a thing and I say, yeah, we want to be diverse about that, right? And so if you look across a lot of the more computational or computer software oriented or gaming oriented conferences, they've instituted code of conducts in order to try to make some of those events be more accepting and more open to people who are maybe not your typical attendees of those conferences. And we've never had a problem with Brainhack, but we also kind of want to act maybe before any problems were created. And I don't expect there to be any problems. But we're starting now to also go and get federal funding. And so things about being really obvious about what our plans are for encouraging diversity and protecting diverse people is something that was important. And so for these reasons, we adopted the code of conduct. Pretty much what it says is you cannot harass anybody, right? It doesn't matter what level of standard is in place in America based on the proclivities of the president, right? You are not allowed to harass anybody at a Brainhack. If you do or harass anybody, you will be asked to stop. If you don't stop, you will be evicted. Depending on the circumstances, you may never be allowed to attend the Brainhack again, and we probably will not miss you. If you feel like you are a victim of harassment that is not been seen by others, then you're encouraged to discuss that with the person at your local event, your local organizer or local organizing committee. If for whatever reason you feel uncomfortable talking about them, then please communicate that to me at info@brainhack.org. I'm the only person that reads that. Me and Allison Malinsky are the only people that read that, and she is an administrator that works with me. And so it's not something that will be, blared or publicly spread. Daniel Lurie, if you look at the Slack, Daniel Lurie has found out a way to send an anonymous email. They tell me about what's going on and let me know. And if you are an organizer of an event, which is more kind of the TV world, and there's a particularly problematic situation you're dealing with, please contact me. All right? Is everybody cool with not harassing each other? Fantastic. All right. Well, that's all I had. Are there any questions anybody has? You can go ahead and stop that.